Welcome to Skinner Sports Network here. I'm your host, Nate Skinner. Now, today we are going to be doing a mock draft, the Skinner Sports Network Mock Draft 1.0. I'm going to control all the teams here. We're loaded into the draft. I'm going to head in to the draft here, and we are going to start here, and we're going to take a look here at the first pick. Starting with the Chicago Bears, they got this pick from the Carolina Panthers in last year's trade that included Bears wide receiver DJ Moore. Now, a lot of people believe that Caleb Williams is going to be the pick. Now, here's the situation. If you are going to go with Justin Fields, you'll probably look to take an offensive lineman here, or you're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. But what people think and what I think might happen most likely is I believe they're going to go with Caleb Williams. So look for Caleb Williams here to be the first draft pick. I really think that's what they're going to do. You're going to have to extend Fields rather soon, pick up his fifth-year option, and pay him lots of money. And if you want to restart that quarterback carousel, not carousel, but restart at the quarterback position, it's smart to do Caleb Williams and make him be your franchise quarterback. And I think Caleb Williams out of USC is the guy. He'll be cheap. You can build around him and build a great offense with your franchise quarterback. So with pick number 1 here, we are going to take Caleb Williams out of USC quarterback. And heading into next pick, a lot of people believe that Drake May will be the second quarterback off the board. I think Jaden Daniels has the potential to be the second quarterback off the board, depending how the board shifts or what Washington wants to do, if they want to go Jaden Daniels or Drake May. A lot of people are split 50-50 between May and Daniels, but believing what I think is that Drake May will be a Washington Commander. I think 3 quarterbacks in a row could go in this draft, depending what the Patriots do. Again, this is before free agency right now, but we are going to take Drake May here out of USC, or out of North Carolina, my bad. And we are going to do Drake May here at the second pick for Washington. Now, the Patriots have an interesting pick here. You could go Marvin Harrison Jr. if you wanted to get your wide receiver 1. Maybe you could sign someone like a Kirk Cousins in free agency, especially with the 60-something million the Pats are going to have to spend in free agency. I think that maybe a wide receiver might be something to look here, but maybe Jaden Daniels is the guy if you want to sign some free agents. Maybe you could look at someone like Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins, who could come to New England, maybe pair him up with the young quarterback. I think what I'm going to do here is take Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels would be the move here, especially if a good quarterback fell to them. And now to number 4 would most likely and most definitely will be Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. His teammate Ibuka has returned to Ohio State. Emeka Ibuka returned to Ohio State, and it's a smart move considering that guy could be the number 1 wide receiver, just like his teammate Marvin Harrison Jr. will be this year. So the Cardinals are going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. here at number 4. And here we go, moving on to 5. Now, an interesting pick here. You could go wide receiver, Malik Neighbors here, if you wanted to get a guy. A lot of question marks about Quentin Johnston right now. A lot of people just are hesitant to command him that wide receiver or 1 position. You do have older guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams who can't stay healthy. Maybe you take someone like Brock Bowers who can be a tight end and a receiver. Brock Bowers is a great tight end out of Georgia. He can be a tight end. He can be a receiver too. He's just an athletic tight end. You could look at Malik Neighbors here who can stretch the field for you, can run short, medium, deep. He's a field stretcher for you. Depends if you get rid of Keenan Allen. I think the best move here too is to look at Rome Odunze out of Washington. He's a successful wide receiver out of Washington's system with Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer now the Alabama head coach. He came from Washington, had a player like Rome Odunze, and I think that Rome Odunze is possible. I've seen him go to the Chargers in a couple mock drafts, especially because he is that good. And I think you could either go Brock Bowers or Neighbors or a Dunze. I think that with Malik Neighbors sitting here, I think that may be the move because you just cannot pass up on a guy like that. And we're going to take Malik Neighbors here out of LSU. I think that will be the move. And heading into pick 6 for the New York Giants. Now, you did just pay Daniel Jones that big contract. Maybe you trade him if you want to do something different in the offseason and just kind of focus on next year's quarterback draft class. But I think the best thing the New York Giants could do here is focus on your O-line. Give Daniel Jones some time to throw because Daniel Jones is not bad. You got to give him a pocket for him to really do something, and the Giants O-line is trash. Evan Neal from Alabama that they drafted not too long ago. Maybe he can move inside to like guard or maybe stay at tackle, and maybe you get someone like Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. I think you could do Joe Alt here. Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu are tackle 1A, tackle 1B. Depends which one you like more. After his latest season, a lot of people think that Olu Fashanu is tackle 2, and you just don't want to see OTG on the ground, as Daniel Jeremiah was explaining. Daniel Jeremiah likes to do mock drafts. He is very great at his draft evaluations on players. I like his podcast with Bucky Brooks on moving the sticks, or Move the Sticks, I believe it's called. And that's a good podcast. Usually I like to listen to it because Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks are really good at their job. They're my go-to guys. But I think we're going to take Joe Alt here out of Notre Dame. I think they're going to need to build their O-line. And maybe you can move around Evan Neal. I really think you could do that, move him inside the guard possibly if you don't think he's a NFL caliber tackle. But we are going to take Joe Alt here. And now with pick number 7, you're sitting here with pick 7 as the Tennessee Titans. It says their needs are wide receiver, O-line, and DB. And maybe you take Rome Odunze here, but you could take Olu Fashanu if you want to look at your O-line. I think I'm going to take Olu Fashanu here out of Penn State here for the Tennessee Titans. Their O-line is pretty weak, especially when they had other guys come in and fill in for some stars on their line that they think they have. I think that Olu Fashanu here is the pick here for the Tennessee Titans. Would be a great fit, and he might still be a tiny bit raw. He might just need to fix a couple things, but he did improve in his 2023 season at Penn State. But we're going to take Olu Fashanu here out of Penn State. Now moving to the Falcons. Now if Jaden Daniels fell here to number 8, you're looking to take Jaden Daniels, but unfortunately he is not here. But maybe you go and look at an edge rusher because Bud Dupree is not going to be there. He's a free agent. And the Atlanta Falcons just haven't found an edge guy. So you look at Dallas Turner, you look at Jared Verse, but I like Dallas Turner. Personally, I watch a lot of Alabama games. I know that's going to make me biased towards Dallas Turner because I watch a lot of Alabama games. I like Alabama. But Dallas Turner is a playmaker. He can pass rush. He can run defend well. He's quick. He's athletic. He is going to get to the quarterback at all costs. Him and Will Anderson played together, and that was a duo. But even when Will Anderson Jr. left to go to the draft and is in Houston, Dallas Turner stepped up and made some key plays during Alabama's season that ultimately ended against the Michigan Wolverines. But we are going to take Dallas Turner here, get the Falcons an edge rusher that they need. Dallas Turner out of Alabama. Welcome to the ATL. Now, we're going to head back to Chicago. Now, you have DJ Moore, but now you have a new quarterback in Caleb Williams. So you could look at someone like Rome Odunze, or you could go down later and Maybe you could take a look here at Brian Thomas Jr. if you want a speedy guy, but I think Rome Odunze here is hands down the pick here at pick 9 for the Chicago Bears. Get another guy to pair with DJ Moore. Rome Odunze is a beast. I personally like him. I think he's a good route runner. I think he spaces the field well. I think he can run any layer of the field, deep, middle of the field, short. I think he can fill the role that you need him to fill. And I think pairing him with DJ Moore allows DJ Moore to play with a little less pressure, but it gives Caleb Williams out of USC a little more opportunity to throw and make plays. It's just the pick here. I know you got Brock Bowers, but he's more of a tight end. You could pick him up as the best player available here, but we are going to go Rome Odunze out of Washington here at pick 9. Coming up at pick 10, you have the New York Jets. Needs being wide receiver, tackle, and defensive interior. You could look at Jerzon Newton here out of Illinois. Now, he is a bit on the smaller side. You could look maybe to get someone like Jared Verse if you want a star edge, if you're not feeling confident about your edge. But you did just get Will McDonald last year in the draft, so maybe take that off the board. Maybe the Jets with Mekhi Becton not really panning out how they like. Maybe you get J.C. Latham out of Alabama. That may be the move here because J.C. Latham being a tackle and that being a need here for New York, that could be what they need. But we're going to go J.C. Latham here. I think that's going to be the best pick here for the New York Jets as they're trying to fix their line with Aaron Rodgers coming back next year. So we're going to take J.C. Latham here out of Alabama. Now heading on the clock next here at pick 11, for the Minnesota Vikings, their needs being quarterback, running back, guard, center, defensive line, linebacker, and DB. You have a guy here like Brock Bowers. Maybe you take the best player available, but you do have TJ Hawkinson. And depending on how they feel about his injury, it's the same thing for the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, only they know the extent of the injury and where he's at on the recovery. Maybe look at Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean is going to be one of the best DBs to come out. He is athletic, can probably play him at safety if needed, could play him at corner, could play him in the slot corner. I think Cooper DeJean here for the Vikings would be a great piece. You can move him around, blitz him from the slot, have him play outside corner, play safety. Cooper DeJean here at pick 11, going to Minnesota is the move. If you wanted to look at DBs too, you could go Nate Wiggins or Terrion Arnold. But if you want a athletic DB that could be a versatile piece there, it could work because Brian Flores plays a great defense, and having him play in Flores' system may work out for the best. We're going to take Cooper DeJean here out of Iowa here at pick 11. Moving on to pick 12 here for the Broncos. Quarterback, wide receiver, center, edge, and corner. Now, if you want to go tackle here, you look at Talis Fuaga out of Oregon State. You could look here at Nate Wiggins could be the move here. Nate Wiggins is a big name that people like. He played well. I watched a couple Clemson games last year, and it was pretty hard to get the ball to the wide receiver that was guarding, or he was guarding. And I think that's a piece. You could look at someone like Jared Verse. There's a lot of good options here. I think the most realistic option that you could see here is Terrion Arnold going to the Broncos. I think he's a great defensive back here. I know Nate Wiggins might be the option, or Talis Fuaga. I mean, there's a lot of good players here on the board that the Broncos could build around. You could go and look at quarterbacks here in Bo Nix or Michael Penix, unless you're wanting to build around Jarrett Stidham for this year and look to next year's quarterback draft. That could be the move here. But, I mean, if Nate Wiggins here is still available, I think we're going to take Nate Wiggins here, cornerback out of Clemson here at pick 12 for the Broncos. Now heading on to pick 13 for the Las Vegas Raiders. You could look here at Jerzon Newton. You could also look at other defensive interior guys here. You could look at Leonard Taylor out of Miami, but one guy that seems to be jumping boards right now is defensive tackle out of Texas, Byron Murphy. He seems to be jumping draft boards from the latest mock drafts I've been seeing. I think that someone like Byron Murphy here could be picked up, and I think he's going to go to the Raiders. I think he's somebody that might jump over Jerzon Newton, but Jerzon Newton might be someone here that gets picked. I mean, it could go either Newton or Byron Murphy, who seem to jump up draft boards. I think I'm personally here going to look at tackles too, because you can never not build your line. I think Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State here could be the move too. I think that's what I'm going to do here is Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. Build around your line. Protect Aiden O'Connell if you think he's going to be the guy for the future. So we're going to take Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. Now, for the Saints, I know this may be a surprise, but maybe you want a quarterback to sit behind Derek Carr and learn. Maybe you look at a guy like Bo Nix. A lot of people in the draft analysis area right now like Bo Nix. They think he's the next quarterback to go off the board after the three of May, Williams, and Daniels. Now, he did play in an Oregon system where sometimes he was dropping the ball off short to a guy like Troy Franklin and just letting them go. I think that Bo Nix, this is the most potential landing spot to him. I remember the Kenny Pickett draft. They could have potentially gotten Kenny Pickett, but he fell to the Steelers. And it seems like maybe they want a quarterback for the future. So you look at Bo Nix here, and I think this is the best fit available for Bo Nix. So we're going to take Bo Nix here out of Oregon. Now we're going to head to pick 15 with the Indianapolis Colts here. They need wide receiver, O-line, defensive interior, and defensive back. Now, I keep mentioning Jerzon Newton and Byron Murphy. I mentioned them for the Raiders potentially being a pick. But I think here you might want to look at DB too, because DB is still here. You could look at a guy like Terrion Arnold. You have to re-sign guys like Julian Blackmon and Kenny Moore. So maybe you look at a DB, especially if you can't retain both of those key players that were great in your secondary. Kenny Moore is a free agent, and Julian Blackmon is a free agent as well. So let's see. You could go Terrion Arnold or Kool-Aid McKinstry here. I think that you really can't go wrong with either one of these here if you want to go corner. You could take Brock Bowers, but you already have Mo Alley Cox, and you have, let me think of his name. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but you have a lot of tight ends here, but maybe you could put him as a receiver. You could also look at wide receiver possibly if you have Michael Pittman leaving free agency. I think they should pay him. But if not, you'd probably look to get Brian Thomas Jr. here from LSU. But I think the best thing that you could do for the Colts is build their D-line. So maybe they get someone here like a Jerzon Newton, or maybe even better. Let's go take a look here at Byron Murphy. A lot of people like him. He had 6 sacks, 3 hits, and 36 quarterback hurries. He can pass rush and he can run defend. He is jumping up draft boards. And I think the pick here for a good defensive line, especially for the Colts, if they wanted to build an elite one, let's go get Byron Murphy here out of Texas. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks here, and it says their needs are guard, center, and edge. Maybe you go get Jared Verse here. And I think that's where I would go here if you're the Seattle Seahawks. You need a guy off the edge to get pressure because you have a great secondary. It's not like great in terms of, oh my God, but in terms of secondary, it can make plays. I've watched Witherspoon make plays, and just that secondary as a whole can make plays. And I think here's where you take Jared Verse going to the Seattle Seahawks. Now you got the Jacksonville Jaguars here. Now you have a guard, center, edge, and DB. So maybe you go and you look here at corners. I mean, you still got Terrion Arnold here sitting, and I think maybe that's where a team like the Jaguars go get Terrion Arnold. And I could see where that falls. We could look at centers here or interior O linemen being the best, but I mean, this board's not accurate, but you could see someone like Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. He's the center there. He will be going ahead of West Virginia center Zach Frazier here out of West Virginia. And you could look at Powers Johnson here out of Oregon. I think that would be the move if you wanted to improve the O-line. Many guards aren't really going to be – the best guards aren't really going to be there till the second round. Now, I think if you wanted a good center, you could take Jackson Powers Johnson. But I think what you got to do here is sometimes take the best player available at the defensive back position and go Terrion Arnold here. I think that could be a possibility. Now, if you're the Bengals, wide receiver is definitely a big need here. Unless you re-sign T. Higgins and you re-sign Tyler Boyd, who's a free agent. Both are free agents, actually. So if they don't resign those both, you could definitely stamp down Brian Thomas Jr. here, which is what I'm going to do. Just thinking in the future. But if you wanted to, you could take Brock Bowers, which I think they might do here. Brock Bowers is just one of those great players that is tough. I think even with the Chargers earlier in the draft, that's another good spot for him to go. But with great wide receivers sitting there, I think you got to look at the wide receiver position, considering that Mike Williams could never stay healthy. But if the Bengals can land Brock Bowers and you have Jamar Chase, all you'll need to do in free agency and throughout later rounds in the draft is get some studs at wide receiver. And, that's okay. And for the LA Rams, their needs, quarterback, O-line, D-line, linebacker, and DB. I think with Jerzon Newton sitting here, they'll probably take him here. And that's where I have Jerzon Newton going out of Illinois. And now we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I'm a fan of. And listen, I think even if, the Steelers are here, I think with Latu from UCLA, the edge rusher out of UCLA, I should say, is sitting here. I think a team may trade up. And that I'm not going to do the trade here, but that is a Latu. I know that's a name to say, but I think that a team would trade up for him. And if not, there's a team sitting around here with an edge need that would take him. But you could look at Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think Brian Thomas Jr. here, if he was still sitting here, would be an interesting look that you could not pass up. Armarius Mims, he's a raw tackle out of Georgia, just hasn't started in enough games. He is raw. You could take him. You could even look later. You could get Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri. I think one guy I'd like to look at here, considering our safety, is Cameron Kitchens. I like Kitchens because he's just a physical DB. And you could play him in the slot or in corner or whatever you need to do. I know the Steelers like to run their 3 safety sets. They do have DeMonte KZ for another year. I think Cameron Kitchens would be a great pick. He's the safety out of Miami, the Miami Hurricanes, not the Miami, Ohio, just to make that straight, because I know that can be confused. Not really, because there's only one Miami to people. But you got Cameron Kitchens, who I'm going to take here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he would be a great addition next to Minkah Fitzpatrick. So that's why I'm going to take him here. Now for the Miami Dolphins, let's take a look here at O-line. You could take Armarius Mims. He's a raw tackle. But if you want to fix your O-line, I think that's where you could go. You could also look at Jordan Morgan here out of Arizona. He could be developed. He's a great pass blocker, needs to work on the run block and just a tiny bit. And I think that Jordan Morgan could be the pick here, but I think with the raw talent that you could develop here, and I'm not saying raw in a bad way, just more of he just hasn't started enough. He'd need to develop. But I think our Marius Mims here to Miami makes sense. Now, on to the next pick here for the Philadelphia Eagles. You do need to fix your defense. Linebacker, not till later. And, you could also look at wide receiver here. You could look at Brian Thomas Jr. Now, think about this. You have A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith. Now you had a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. who's young, fast, can spread the field for you. I think that would be a dangerous duo with him and Devontae Smith being two speedy wide receivers that can run routes. But Brian Thomas Jr. would be the great deep threat for the Philadelphia Eagles offense. That's why you got to look here at Brian Thomas Jr. So we are going to take Brian Thomas Jr. here to help that offense out a little bit. Now for the Texans, this is Cleveland's pick that they made that trade with for Deshaun Watson. Cleveland gave the Houston Texans this pick. And listen, you could take Laiatu Latu here from UCLA if you don't think you're going to keep Grenard. I like Grenard. He is really great. I watched him dominate the Pittsburgh Steelers when I was watching that game. You could also look here at wide receiver, defensive line. You could honestly, let's see what else is at defensive interior here. Maybe you take a Leonard Taylor out of Miami. You could take, best player available here if you really wanted to, because, that happens sometimes in a draft, because sometimes taking the best player available works out to your favor. Now, off the edge, you can have Laiatu Latu and Will Anderson Jr. dominate the outside. Pick up someone maybe like Kool-Aid McKinstry if you can't re-sign Steven Nelson. And if you wanted to look at edge here, Chris Broswell is good. Braylon Trice out of Washington. You could also get a big receiver in Troy Franklin who can be a physical wide receiver for you. Pair him well with the wide receivers of the Texans. And, it's just one of those guys who could be paired well with that Texans young offense of C.J. Stroud that did very well. People say they overperformed, but I think D'Amico Ryans will be coach of the year, or should be coach of the year in my opinion. I think here maybe you take Kool-Aid McKinstry because you can't re-sign Steven Nelson. And for Houston, or for Dallas, maybe you take someone here like Laiatu Latu and pair him well with someone like Micah Parsons. I think that's what you could do here, because Micah Parsons and Laiatu Latu would make an excellent duo here. So that's what I'm going to do here if the board fell this way. You could also look at Chris Broswell, but I think you got to look at Laiatu Latu to pair with Micah Parsons. That would be a great duo. A young Laiatu Latu with an experienced veteran and Micah Parsons would be deadly. Now you move to Green Bay. Needs being running back, tackle, defensive interior, and safety. Now, if Cameron Kitchens was still available, that's where you go. Now, the best thing you could do here, running back. You could look here running back and get someone like Jonathan Brooks, but I don't think running backs are going to go till the second round. I just think it's going to be it's more going to be offensive tackle, wide receivers, corners, mostly going here. You could look at wide receiver, maybe if you wanted to, if you don't feel confident in your guys. But I think Wicks and, Watson and those guys are starting to really develop a good chemistry with quarterback Jordan Love. Again, maybe you get someone like a Chris Broswell and have him come off your edge, because, getting a good edge rusher once in a while does not hurt. You could maybe look here at safety if you wanted to. I know it's not really a big need till later. You could look at Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, and maybe he comes up the draft boards, and on TDs allowed, he only allowed up 2 and had an interception. Not just one, but he had 5 interceptions and only allowed 2 touchdowns. So maybe for the Green Bay Packers, this is a guy that they target. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. I'm going to have him going to Green Bay. especially after having a good year. 2 TDs only allowed on 5 interceptions. That is pretty impressive. Now, for Tampa Bay, you could take Chris Boswell or Braylon Trice. Maybe you could take, a guard or center. But I think this is maybe where you take an edge here with the edge rushers being well. Now, if we're going between Chris Boswell and Braylon Trice, let's take a look at it. Chris Boswell, great pass rusher, just needs to work on his run defense. Now, if you look at Braylon Trice here out of Washington, he's going to be the better guy here. So I think Braylon Trice would be going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to pair with a young Kalijah Cansey and, just have some young guys on that defensive line. Now, this is Houston's pick from last year. They did trade up to get the Will Anderson draft class with C.J. Stroud. Now, they are saying the needs here. You already got Marvin Harrison Jr. that fell to you into your lap. You need O-line, defensive line, linebacker, and corner. Now, let's see. Maybe you could take a Jordan Morgan here out of Arizona. Or if you want to take Ennis Rakestraw or the sleeper pick out of a MAC school of Toledo, Quinion Mitchell. Send Quinion Mitchell to the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's a possibility. But if you're the Cardinals, you must work on your O-line. Get a guy like Jordan Morgan working on your O-line, especially with Kyler Murray in your backfield, making plays as the quarterback. I think you need to build your offensive line if you want to keep him healthy, especially since you paid him all that money. So we are going to take Jordan Morgan here out of Arizona. I think that's the best pick. Now, for Buffalo, you could go Ennis Rakestraw or you could go Quinion Mitchell. I personally like Quinion Mitchell. I think Quinion Mitchell here, looking at his stats, he's nobody threw at him eventually. They just stopped throwing to him last year, or not last year, but the year before last year in 2022, only gave up 3 touchdowns, had 5 touchdowns, allowed a 34.8 passer rating, and nobody really threw at him in 2023. He was just locked down, gave up 0 touchdowns, had a pick, allowed a 51.1 passer rating. I think Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo is going to skyrocket up boards once people see how good he can play. You could look at someone like Keon Coleman here. I know people are like, Keon Coleman could be a late pick. He could go to someone like the Chiefs, or maybe he falls to the Ravens, which would be scary because they also have Zay Flowers that they drafted out of Boston College last year. And, that's something to watch for. Now, for the Buffalo Bills, I think the best pick here would be Keon Coleman, though he only had 658 yards. I think the talent there would be great. But maybe you take Troy Franklin. Maybe you take someone on the defensive interior. But maybe you look at DB here. I think this is the best place for someone like Quinion Mitchell to fall. Once we find Quinion Mitchell, I think Quinion Mitchell here is the pick out of Toledo, out of the MAC. Here for Kansas City, I think they need a wide receiver. I think you go Troy Franklin here because, that's the best thing. You could also look at defensive interior here because, with Chris Jones not re-signing, if Chris Jones does sign, maybe you could, move back, maybe get someone like Tavondre Sweat. These rankings on PFF are okay. I let those guys do things, but sometimes you can watch tape on people and know that they are much better than what their rankings say. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes it works out. And I could see someone like Tavondre Sweat jumping up boards, but people think his teammate Byron Murphy is a little bit better. And, for the Chiefs, if Troy Franklin's sitting here, maybe you take Troy Franklin, that could be the move. So we're going to take Troy Franklin. Now for the Lions, you could take a corner here too. Take Ennis Rakestraw Jr., pair him with Brian Branch that you just drafted, Cam Sutton, a bunch of those guys. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., taking a look at him. He is great in the run defense, which is good for a corner. And I think with the Lions wanting to play physical, you could get someone like Ennis Rakestraw in your secondary who could be a good run defender. keep developing his passing skills to be absolutely great. Think he can become a complete player here out of Missouri. So we're going to take Ennis Rakestraw Jr. here, put him on the Lions. I think that's the best pick here. Now, for the 49ers, you might want to take a look here at O-line, especially considering that, someone like Trent Williams is getting old. Maybe you look at someone here like Troy Fautanu, and I think that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take Troy Fautanu here out of Washington. I think that's a guy you want to target, especially with Trent Williams getting old. And finally here, rounding out the last pick here for the Baltimore Ravens, wide receiver, defensive line, and cornerbacker needs. You could look here for Kamari Lassiter to jump up the board here. Maybe you get someone like that. I think maybe you do, considering that that's a need. But maybe you look at someone here like a Devontae Walker here out of North Carolina. He's a Kent State transfer that eventually went to North Carolina, had some trouble with the NCAA. Not in a bad way, but he wasn't cleared for the transfer to North Carolina, but he came out of Kent State. So, that's something to watch for. You could get Chris Braswell, some edge depth, and, with Clowney going, that could be a move. And maybe Lad McConkey's going to definitely be a second to third round pick. He's pretty solid. I watched him in the championship game when they played Alabama, and he played injured actually in that game, and he is a tough wide receiver. Looking at offensive tackle, could take Graham Barton. A lot of people think he's going to be more moved inside. You could look at Tyler Guyton. I know these things don't look well. He didn't give up a sack. He only had 3 hits and 9 hurries, but he's an athletic guy. He's a good potential guy. And I think here to finish out the draft, we're going to take Tyler Guyton, tackle out of Oklahoma here. And that's going to do it here on Skinner Sports Network here for the mock draft. And, I think that's what's going to happen here. We're going to finish it out here, take a look here at a mock draft. Let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a comment down below here in the comments section here on YouTube. Make sure to share, like, comment, subscribe. All the support is much appreciated. And let me know what I should look to cover. I'm open to ideas, open to whatever people want. I'm here to cover sports because I absolutely love sports. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. And peace out. Everyone have a great day. Peace.